Hi, everyone. How cool is that? It's LinkedIn Live, Hour of Empower. If it's 11 a.m., any day of the week, we're here. And the only reason we're here is because you keep coming back, and it keeps motivating us to continue to find more valuable takeaways for you. Today's word of the day is inspire. And I'm so fortunate to have Jason back and Carl to bring us up to date on what's going on in their world and how it could possibly benefit your world. And we were just talking prior to going live as how this community can help each other and the person next to you and around you so easily with expression, right? Everybody woke up today with a couple questions they still had yesterday, and if you got a group like America's Got Talent or any of those shows, why not put it out there and say, hey, I'm thinking of this, or I got a question, and especially what's your thoughts of inspire. So we've got some comments starting. Renadeb made it again. He you just see patterns. He's always here, first one, always says the same two comments, and then he'll follow. Tanya's here, who actually is going to be on the show for the first time. She's from South Africa, and she builds funnels, sales funnels. So that should be pretty interesting. So we're getting a lot of specialists who are focused in a specific area, which makes sense because the saying is niches are riches on LinkedIn. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason, and Jason can catch us up a little bit and his initial thoughts on Inspire.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back. I love this community. It's a wonderful thing to see, and it's sometimes I get challenged trying to read the comments and talk at the same time too, so because it's such an interactive community, so it's a lot of fun. So thank you for having me back on this wonderful Monday morning. So for those that don't know me, my name is Jason Gerardo. My company is One Path Coaching. I really focus on helping people get rid of any inner obstacles that they might have, make some changes, and live the life of purpose that they're looking for, or that maybe they didn't even know they needed. And so inspire is a big one on there. So sometimes we find that inspiration, and that takes us to the next level. So, we're talking about motivation a little bit, I think, too. So that's really exciting. Been doing good things, just talking to folks, like Don said, having different programs that I've been on with other people. I like this one because the community is so rich and so interactive. But I also love, being able to share things with other people. And had an article come out about me and veterans' mental health. That's something that's very important to me. And I am inspired by that, inspired by those that are in that field. And a quick definition that I saw about inspire this morning that I wanted to share real quick was to feel someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something. So I'm kind of going to come from that point as we talk later on today.
Sounds great. What a great catch up. Carl, it's your turn.
Thank you. Don, thanks for having me on the program today. So I'm Carl Dakin. I call myself the capital coach. Through my consulting firm, Dakin Capital, I work with organizations to design, stage, and carry out capital campaigns. And in doing that, I have my own approach to raising capital, which I call motivated money, which is what's behind me here on the sign. So I guess I may call myself a professional inspirationalist. We'll start with that and see how that goes. But what I try to do is I try to find those investors who are most motivated and figure out what else I can do to increase that motivation so that they actually take action, put money into a particular small business or organization that is looking to raise capital. And this is a very difficult task. And in today's capital market, which has been in contraction since early last year, most of the people who are discretionary investors are on the sidelines. So we need to basically drill down, get better, get smarter on what is going to convert somebody from a maybe investor into an absolute investor.
Okay, well, I think that's really specific to a lot of people's needs. And what I'm starting to see is a larger demand without the ability to support it. As things are changing, things are getting very tumultuous, very dramatic, moving very quickly on many fronts, that everything is really hard to rationalize. You know,
Yeah,
so go ahead, Carl.
yeah, I was just going to say, Don, that's kind of the heart of the problem is that investors like to invest with confidence. And when you have an uncertain market that's chaotic, you don't know where it's going, then you're going to defer, delay, or not make the decision. So, getting to that inspiration, what is it that's going to cause somebody to take action now instead of waiting until tomorrow? And it's a hard question to ask because it's very individualistic. Everybody has their own drivers, their own motivators, but as a business, you've got to take that into account. You've got to adapt and thrive in a bad market. So what are you going to do?
Well, I think everybody wants time freedom and financial freedom. And that's getting harder to accomplish either one, and especially both. So I think with knowing circumstances, you want to work with a little bit more sense of urgency in action, right? And not just in thought. And that's hopefully what will come from communities like that, like this, is motivation and inspiration to get going. You know, what's on your list that you could do today, but you're not going to? Not what's on your list that you can't do, right? If you want to go to New York and it's not going to happen, I mean, you just cross that till tomorrow maybe. But I think that's the key, is how many action steps did you take? How many thought steps did you take? And how many distractive steps did you take? And there's a lot more time sucks, like social media, if it's not utilized to the best benefit. And I think that's where people have to urge people to make time to do something important towards what's important to them. Mm-hmm. So I'll just go to the audience and we'll swing it right back to Jason. Debbie's here. Debbie's our butterfly lady. I love that you're cultivated international group here in the Wings down. And Debbie's into the monarch migration to Mexico every year, and she's going down there again. Just a fabulous lady. She's been on the show 4 or 5 times. Just really lights it up. Elizabeth is here, who's going to be here Wednesday with William Gay III. Good morning, popping in to say hello. Always great to see you. Renadeb says to inspire means to fill someone with the urge, enthusiasm, or motivation to do something good. Great. You know, it's nice to do a little homework and figure out, you know, what does this mean? This is a great rich start to our day. We're inspired. Thanks. Dennis has been here every day. Got a terrific heating and cooling business in Denver for 46 years. Wow. And just always comes up with inspirational quotes. An individual always has to be inspired to start something new during the day, and it brings out creativity, motivation, and a positive change in an individual. And that's so great, Renata, because I've talked to Renata, he's out in India, and, you know, learning is earning, you know, sharing is caring, you know, so if you can give people, hey, if it's good enough for him or her, hey, maybe I should try it. You know, that's all you got to ask yourself, can I try it and see how it looks versus having to make a big commitment. Agree, we do not have to find the investors. Leslie's here. Everybody knows Leslie. She does Saturdays with me. She's got so much going on. I'm sure she just left Mind Over Matter, which is her audio on Monday morning. She's got Think and Grow Rich on Friday. She's doing something with Paul somewhere. So anyways, great to see you, Leslie. Thought drives action. Yeah, and action drives thought too. So it works kind of both ways. Agree, we got to know what's on the list today and less likely to miss it. So right. So Jason, where do you see the need that you serve going?
So one thing I want to jump back on and just to piggyback off what both you and Carl had said was kind of what I was thinking about when it comes to inspire is 2 terms, signal to noise and wheat from chaff. There's so much information out there right now. Some of it's true, some of it's not, but there's just so many data points, so much information coming at us all the time that it's hard to know what to act on. And that could cause, you know, the analysis paralysis, as they say, it can cause us to not want to take action because we're like, man, what am I going to do? And whether it's investing or it's living your best life, or so many other things that we do that we call our life, can be held up, and we don't feel inspiration, we don't feel motivation, because maybe we're coming from a place of anxiety or fears of scarcity or something of that nature. And so what I do to help people is to get, we had talked about this before the call, is clarity and awareness. So start off with, where are you at? What do you want? Or what do you know what you want? And so helping people find that and getting rid of what's holding them back usually sparks something. And that spark is the first step to inspiration. And then inspiration leads to motivation, and motivation leads to action, which gets you to where you want to be. So I'll put that out there to the community and see kind of what that resonates with.
Yeah, I think that, that's really zeroing in on a point we're trying to make, is buy more vowels before you solve a puzzle. And so many people are so into information and so much into stuff that they forget the people factor.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the vowels you want to access. Information just kind of tells you more. Someone can tell you what really happened. What was their experience?
Yeah.
How they accomplish some level of solution to it. And at the end of the day, too, people end up where they started sometimes, and where they started has a lot to do with where they end up. But you got to ask yourself, how do you want your voice heard? And how is that going to get there? What's the vehicle?
Yeah.
And the people do the best they can without doing the very best that's available that they can. And I think time, if you work backwards, you ask yourself, what am I doing today that's going to change in 90 days?
Right.
Fast forward. At what point do you say, why put in the next 90 days if I know at the end of it, it's still going to put me where I'm at or a little bit ahead, when you can take another road? Because your value is what you know and how you can share it with somebody else. And very few people want to get into the details and the technical stuff and the strategic stuff of marketing and everything else. It's not very aligned, and it's not very supportive, right? You tend to say, I'll do less because I don't want to deal with trying to get more, if that's how you got to go out and get the more. So let's swing it over to the audience again. We've got some great audience here. Let me see where we ended. Okay, so let's start with Elizabeth. Nice to see you. Great to meet you. Thank you for welcoming everyone. This is a great rich start. Inspired. Renata always has to be. Okay, I think we covered that. Let me switch down to, okay, Debbie. Inspire equals observing a person of honesty and transparency who has overcome obstacles for contribution. That's very strong, because it talks about the intangibles of honesty, transparency. To what Carl's doing, honesty and transparency is everything. You're not going to trust people with money if you don't trust them before money, right? And the same thing with Jason. You're working with somebody, you don't want to be opaque. You don't want to be confusing or anything like that. So, I think transparency is so important. Leslie says no one takes any action when confused, right, Jason? Then comes back with, we sit with confusion, order will ultimately be restored. Yeah. I mean, there's some absolutes and maybe not so many absolutes. I have found the overall purpose to setting a goal, we will always have our best chances, is to stay motivated long enough to achieve it. And ask yourself, how do you get motivated? What's your motivation exercise? Do you read a book? Do you listen to music? Do you take a walk? Do you listen to a show like this? Well, what's more motivating is creating your own show. Because what people are lacking today is control. They're losing control. They're losing control of where their dollar is and what's happening in the world and everything else. So why not take control of what you can? While everybody else is in that, let me think about it. The other road is learning more. And here's a new name. Hi from Serbia. Well, welcome from Serbia. Great place. And with that, I'll swing it back to Carl. Carl, what do you think about this audience? They're very proactive today.
Well, I think that this is the kind of crowd I love to hang out with because I get up in the morning and I'm sometimes referred to as an action figure or the Energizer Bunny because I'm always out there doing something. And I like hanging out with other people who are also out there getting stuff done. One of the things that I find as a potential source of inspiration, it's become a recent study of mine, is the subject of heroes. And the hero is somebody that we define as going out there and doing something extra, typically for somebody else, for the community. And in doing that, they can serve as a source of personal inspiration. So we actually have taken this question of who is your hero and how do you recognize your hero? How do you do something with your hero to give back to your hero? I made it a centerpiece in one of the crowdfunding campaigns I'm working with currently. And it's been very, very interesting to see how somebody says, well, when I get up in the morning, and as Jason was saying, we've got all this noise, all this stuff. And how do you center? How do you focus? Well, if you have a hero, that's one way. Say, well, this is what my hero did yesterday. I can do that too. Or I'm going to try to elevate my conduct to be as close to my hero as I can possibly be. And it's been a real interesting thing to see the relationship there and the ability to focus on some one person who's getting it done, as was described by one of our listeners, is going out there and doing something, something good, something that helps. And doing that, then you become part of a collective community of helpers or doers. And I think that's very inspirational, and it gives us all a reason to go forward because we're not out there alone. We're out there as part of this larger consciousness who all are doing our own thing, whether we're doing it intentionally, we're just kind of doing it. And I like that.
Well, that's terrific. And, to that point, every day, all we have to do is get a little bit better, but have to do it every day, and everybody could read one more page in this next 24 hours of something, right? Everybody could do a little bit of a little bit. And after a while, they might like it and do a little bit more, right? How you start isn't how you continue. But I think it's more about redirection of time, thought, and resources is where, if you're in investments, your best investment is in yourself, right? Because it's easy. There's no broker fees, there's no due diligence, and there's no legal. And where could you invest more of your time to get a better result? I mean, look at your personal business plan, let's say. Who are you hanging out with? Where are they going? Where do you plan on going with them? Right? Because some things that are set really turns into forget. Right? I covered that base. I'm going to go on to something else. Well, maybe you never covered it as well as you can now. So how do you take inventory? How do you review? How do you reflect? And then how do you share what you just thought of with other people? Just to give it a quick run through, right? What could hurt? Either you're going to get people say, hey, that's a great idea, go for it. Or did you notice, this piece over here or whatever? And I think that's the beauty of community, not just learning, but doing, taking action with each other. How many people give recommendations to anybody? Right?
Yeah.
Not that many. Why? Takes 3 minutes. Why? Well, because they're not getting one, right? They're waiting to give while other people are out there giving and they're getting. So it's just maybe turning things from A to B and B to A, and that's all it takes, right? Maybe it's just a bad connection. So anyways, let's get back to the audience. Leslie is a crystal clear vision of what we want and why. That's the how. That must have been something I said earlier. We are a very smart audience, for sure. I mean, smart enough to know we need help and smart enough to know we can help others. That's all the two things you got to know is you do have something to bring to the picnic if someone's willing to try it, right? And how do you make it easy for them to know it, that it's even there, right? That's why people buy shelf space, right? If you want eye vision, there's value, right? And people understand that, especially if you know when they really see it, they're going to benefit, and you'll be better than expectation. Dennis comes back, song "I Need a Hero." Yeah, that was a good one. That was that Tina Turner song. Dennis comes back, "I see your hero doesn't mean to be a hero." Oh, Dennis, you're getting too much for a Monday. Step by step. Khan is here. Khan is coming on the show. Great gentlemen, great morning to all. Great discussion on inspiration and elevating our behavior to a new level. It's kind of funny is only 2.2% of the people on LinkedIn are 55 and older, and like 90% of the audience here is 55 and older. So, what happens is people get attracted to like-minded, like situational people, right? It's easy for someone to say, "I know what you're talking about. I'm right there with you," or what you just said, "I just did." And then everybody can ratchet up together, right? If at a certain point you can create a safe place, then give it up, put your weapons away, loosen your arms a little bit, relax, it's okay. And those are the people that further themselves, is those trusting people in trusting people, not absolutely. So another key thing, here we go with Leslie. Leslie says that's Kaizen, Don. One small extra thing each day. How Michael Phelps won medals by. Yeah, it's any champion is doing twice the work of someone who isn't a champion. I was reading that Arnold Schwarzenegger audio today, or listening to it. He would lift 40,000 pounds a day. That's what goes in a semi. And everybody would do 2.5 hours in the morning. He'd do 2.5 in the morning and 2.5 at night every day. And that's what it took to be a champion, to be a hero. But it can be done. He found 2.5 hours at night that most people probably wouldn't be too excited by what they spend it on, especially how you become a world champion. Thank you. Do help us get better every day. Well, we all do. Okay, Sheila's here. Haven't seen you, Sheila, in a while. Hopefully, it was with Diaz is with me in LA for a procedure. Okay, just learned. Okay, plan. Okay, well, that's interesting. I don't know how it has inspirational benefit. How do you get inventory? By being inventive, for sure. Leslie comes back. We are the smartest. Well, good for you and good for us. Rita's here. Haven't seen Rita in a while. Rita's just a wonderful lady. Actually introduced me to Debbie, our butterfly lady. And that's what community does, right? A lot of people create content and they think because they created it, that's what they're going to post. But when you don't have content, why not share somebody else's that inspired you that day? Right? You're still serving your audience, but you're saying, "Hey, I found this and it's probably in your own mind better than what I could have created. And now I don't even have to create it." But it's consistently getting in front of your community, because it shouldn't be, "When do I feel like doing it?" What does it take to do it every day? All you do is hit share. Boom. Your audience sees something from you. But not only that, that person sees that you just shared something and promoted them, right? And I think that's so key. So moving it back to Jason, what's your inspired new thoughts?
A couple things I've been thinking about. So sometimes inspiration is inspiration itself. So, sometimes when you're not feeling it, once you start, like you said, once you start writing that post or you start creating something, then that spark hits you. Then you get, they say inspired is being in spirit. So that spirit hits you at that point, and then it can take you to that next level. So it's about showing up. talking about showing up, I wanted to share too about community, and community is inspiring. And it might not be the same for everybody. There might be a comment that may not strike for everybody, but it hits it. One of the things I talk about is like a book. The benefit of a book is not in its binding, it's not in its printing, it's not in its pages, it's in what you take out of it. Same way with community. There's something that's going to be said today, hopefully for everybody, that inspires them in some way, that takes them to that next level. And so I think it's very important to stay in community and to show up in community too. I think we start with just kind of peeking and watching and seeing, oh, this is my place, these are my people, and then you feel comfortable, and then you put out there, and now you're inspiring people. So I think it's this forum is very important, and community is very important.
Well, absolutely. And your community and your life is very important. And how do you serve that? How do you serve your family? How do you serve your friends? Right? How much do you recognize them? How much do you promote them? How much do you support them?
Yeah.
Or are they just friends in waiting for something to happen? Right? For some dramatic, life-changing event. Could be a wedding, it could be a funeral, who knows? But the point is it's hard to understand what you didn't understand at an earlier point in your life, which is while you're complaining or disappointed about how your life is, that's time to change it. Right? You're the person who can get the next work order. Like, okay, we all decided I'm in this rut. Okay, how do we get out? Right. Instead of how do we just keep telling ourselves we're in a rut? And life waits for nobody, and time waits for nobody. Just because you don't want to make a move doesn't mean everything isn't continue to move around you. Right? And what I see with live streaming, 24 times the comment says organic video. And you know what it takes to do organic video? Forever. And you know what happens when you do it? You look so rehearsed. You look so clean. And you're talking to nobody when you're talking. Right? So if you could save all the time and forget about everything else you did. If I was a new person on LinkedIn, I would never post. I'd never even get into the mob with likes and comments and making connection. I just get a show and keep talking about what I think is important. Bring other people on, and things will come to you that way versus starting out chasing. How is something going to chase you when you're always chasing it? So it should be attracting based on, hey, I know this person. I watch them all the time. They're so smart, and they got smart people, and they talk in a nice, safe, respectful, courteous manner. This is your brand. Right? Popularity means nothing, because, I tell everybody, what you want to build is a community, not an audience. An audience is just waiting for the next act. Where a community will follow you, and you can now work with those 30 or 40. I'd rather do more with less players than less with more players, right? Because now you get the relationship. So, Carl, what is your new thoughts since we've been on this direction of inspiration?
When you mentioned another song recently with the theme hero in it, there's a brand new release out by Dion DiMucci called American Hero. It's a single he just cut, and he basically encourages every person to become a hero and to stand up, to take action, and to do something. And it's a very inexpensive record. You can download for $1.39. But if you got nothing else to do today and you're having one of those points, just play the song. It's got a country western beat, which I know isn't for everybody, but it gets to the point that we all have control to improve upon ourselves. And sometimes we really struggle to get that inspiration to move forward. But I think a lot of people can find that within themselves. And, defining, what is, their next level up, where do you want to get to? What do you want to accomplish? whether you want to be recognized in your community for working in the soup kitchen or doing something else that benefits your community, be an everyday hero. Doesn't really matter how you define it, but having a definition will give you a little bit of direction. And if you got a direction, then you start notching the milestones and working in that direction.
Yeah, that makes those, that seems so, stair step in a way of, if you can't do a lot, do a little. If you can't give a lot, give a little. Make it aligned with making you better for being and doing it. Because to overwhelm oneself, to stress, to impose on other parts of your life that might be imbalanced. So I think a vision goes a long way when you attach it to inspiration, right? If you set up on a road trip, it's going to take 19 hours or 18 hours. After an hour, you're not thinking, when do we get there? Right? You just start knocking it off, right? And then you enjoy the ride, right? If you don't worry about the destination, you can see the scenery, you can pull off if something looks interesting or you want to relax because it's part of your life what you're doing. So many people just get to where they're going and everything in the middle was a blur. And then as soon as they get there, they can't wait to now go somewhere else and make it another blur.
Yeah.
Where I've found that the busier it gets, the faster it gets, the more you got to pull back, the more you got to slow down, right? If you were working with a conveyor belt, you'd have to adjust to it to keep up to it. And life is so overwhelming with media, with so many stories, right? If you talk about heroes, the challenge is there's too many celebrities who aren't heroes. Right? I mean, who are people looking up to? When I grew up, it was like Ted Williams or somebody like that, or somebody who went to the moon. He's someone who dared to climb Mount Everest. Those were the stories of inspiration you'd get in school. The guy who did the Pacific in a canoe or whatever, all in a raft. But those were inspiring because it showed someone can do it. Right? Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and they had doctors saying physically it can't be done. Right? We just can't run that fast. And what's fascinating? The year after, 6 people broke the 4-minute mile. Right? Because they didn't have the concern or the fear or whatever. So Jason, it seems like we're building kind of a blended mosaic of how people can retrofit what they're already working on. And I know you're in the element of helping people. So with all this overwhelming change, how are you starting to communicate with your community?
I shared earlier a little bit about what my background is, and it's neurolinguistics, hypnosis, timeline therapy, and a bunch of different things. But also, I have a practice, my personal practice of over 40 years of mindfulness and meditation. And they found that we have, and this is, I'm gonna swing it back around real quick. We have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and they found that almost half of those are about the past, or ruminating about the past, or worrying about the future, and we're not present in our lives. And I think by being present in our lives, everything makes a little more sense. About be here now and be focused on what you're focused on. Don't concern yourself with what yesterday happened, or, oh my goodness, what's going to happen tomorrow. Be fully present in where you're at. And that's the key to living your life, because that's when your life is. And so I help people kind of focus on that as well. And at the same time, clear out all that negative stuff that's in the past that's holding them back. So, there's 2 parts to that. And inspiration, I did want to say, this might be going in a little different direction, but I want to say about inspiration, you can be inspired by someone positive, and you can be inspired by someone that's negative. Finding we share the definition about the urge or ability to do or feel something, and people can urge you to feel or do something negative. And so I think the key is to focus on what you do want, not on what you don't want. Take positive inspiration in your life. Be aware of those things that you don't want, but don't use it as your guide, because if we keep moving forward, we're going to go forward. Try driving home. If you're driving somewhere, try driving to that place looking in your rearview mirror. You can't do it. So we lose our focus. And if we can get our focus back and be focused on what we want, that'll take us to that level.
Makes so much sense. Makes so much sense. Let me cover the audience and we'll swing it back to Carl. Okay, we'll just start with Boom from Merjana. And then we'll move to Dennis. Agree, show up, not off. And the key to it is be interested, not interesting. Right. Show an interest in others. Don't be self-promotional so much. Lanisha, I talked to Lanisha, wonderful lady. She's going to be coming on the show. Yes, community is so key. And I once heard that it's about common unity with an emphasis on unity. Lanisha is so inspirational. She's done 5 keynote speeches already this year. So she's out there sharing her message. Debbie Clement, action, baby steps over time add up and inspire progress over the long haul. Plus, you could savor your small victories every day. If you had a great meal, you wouldn't try to eat it with one swoop. You'd cut it up, you'd chew it. Dennis says, agree, with good communication, you can create good connections and better directions. And why not start there? Because wherever you start is going to be challenged or have issues or not go the distance. But at least you started with a full tank. Sorry for oh no, it's okay, Sheila. Merjan says admission. Dennis says agree, heroes have to be good heroes. Khan comes back with impossible is an opinion, Muhammad Ali. In that book, and that Audible I was reading, it said Muhammad Ali only counted his push-ups when he felt pain. And those were the push-ups that made a difference. So if he did 100, it didn't matter until he felt some pain, because he knew that was an opportunity to grow. That was pushing him, and you have to integrate things that are going to come whether you like them or not, or whether you planned on it. But, it's better to work with it than work against it. Great point, Jason Kahn says. That's why the windshield looking forward is much bigger than the rear view mirror looking back, to use your metaphor. So true. There's a saying, don't look back unless you want to go back, right? And I think that's so important. What's done is done. It is what it is. You can put anything you want onto it for as long as you want to keep it alive, but it's not going to change it, right? So how long does long have to take before you move on? So, Carl, what's your new insights?
Well, one of the things that I'm kind of tuning up to, I can't say I'm an expert at it yet, but I found that when the center core of all my activities are getting a little bit challenged, that I can find a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of motivation by adopting a charity and engaging in what I call my own personal fundraising activities for that particular charity. Because while whatever I'm doing day in, day out may be facing its own challenges and may not be moving the direction or speed I'm looking for, if I go out and start a fundraising campaign to help a particular charity, everything I do is positive. There's no negatives, there's no backwards, there's nothing really, except I got one more thing done. I raised a little more money. I got a little more resources into that charity. And the charity is always appreciative. I've never had a charity tell me, no, sorry, we're for all your help in raising money. So it's great feedback, and it gives you one more type of a milestone or personal milestone to put in your book. And whether you stick with one charity over time or you adopt a new charity every year and keep stacking them up, it's just one more thing that's contribution to your community. But it is also inspiring because of the fact that you're doing good by helping the charity out.
So what recent charities have you adopted?
I'm working right now with the Cancer League of Colorado. They raise money primarily for research. About 80% of the money goes into R&D here in Colorado, and then 20% goes out to organizations who support people who are impacted by cancer. And so they're a 100% volunteer organization. They have zero cost. So I know every dollar that I help them raise is falling to the bottom line. And they're just a great group of people. They are themselves inspirational just to see them work and all the time and effort they put into that.
Well, that's beautiful because there are so many communities that people can access that welcome them, right? They don't have to be social communities. They just have to be like-minded or like-purpose people who, I think one of the biggest challenges in these days since COVID of isolation and insulation is lack of community, lack of interaction, lack of being with people who are just like you and you would have never known it until everybody decided to meet up somewhere and see for themselves. I always trust people to trust themselves. If they see something good, if they see something of value, they're naturally going to continue to gravitate to it. So the idea is to continue to create value because no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
Right? So if you can put the care in the beginning, maybe they'll take the time to get to know you the whole way versus spoiling the surprise and saying, here's what I do, here's what I am, here's how we can work without even saying hello. And I think that's what people get disappointed in social media. You connect with somebody and you got a 4-paragraph, how I can get you 30 more leads next week. Right? And it's like, boy, that doesn't make me want to connect with just anybody, and they never tell you what's coming, So anyways, not to digress, Jason.
Yeah, so I was thinking about inspiration and then going back to a lot of the stuff that was said today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you both for being here today. It's amazing. And having me join you, actually, more to the point, in your community. Don, you were saying, you put the show out there and you have that community, not an audience. And I'm stealing that. The audience is waiting for the next act. I'm going to steal that from you because I think that's great and that's true. And it drives me nuts when people talk about their followers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, please, can we stop using that word, please? Because it is about, for me, and I think for all of us, it is about community. The point I want to make about inspiration and about being transparent and putting it out there is that you don't know what's going to necessarily inspire your community. And I think if you try to be analytical and you're like, well, I'm going to talk about this specifically because that's going to inspire these people or this is what they want to hear, you might be missing the mark completely. But I think in this kind of having an open conversation where it free flows, they're going to tell you what inspires them. They're going to share with you, this is why I'm showing up for you in the community that you're building. And then from there, you can build on that. So I think this is a beautiful format for inspiration.
Well, thank you. You're so kind. And that's a benefit to the audience because, this is 400 days in a row or 500, I don't know. But it was never intended from day one to be more than today's show.
Right.
And it turned out to be 400 days of the show. And with that, you get comfort and relaxation. Yeah. You do anything 400 days in a row, right? That you wake up, you get ready, you invite, you have calls, and it becomes a comfortable thing to do, a relaxed thing to do. And then you find, hey, I got to inspire the co-host to come up with the best they have in the moment. We have to inspire the audience to be in the present, like you say. And if this was just ask and you'll get, there should be more asking because there's definitely more reserve of giving, right? I could offer so much more if someone asked me or someone said, hey, can you talk on this? Or I could turn it over to somebody. But, at the end of the day, it's being the good person that is in the scarcest supply. When you talk about inspiration, you're really talking about friendship. Because at that point, it's like, hey, a friend can inspire you so much more because you know them, you trust them, you like them. And you're giving them an opportunity to help you. So many people feel asking is intruding. If your cup's overflowing and someone needs a few drops, it's a pleasure, right? If you had 3 hamburgers and someone brought you the fourth, you'd be looking for a stranger to eat it for you. So at what point is enough? And at what point is the time to share? And you know what? Today is an either and world, not an either or. You can have everything you want and still help everybody else get everything they want. And that saying, it's lonely at the top, is true. The last thing you want to do is hit a home run and be the only person at the party. And everybody else created that event. The people before you, you're standing on the shoulders for people who made tremendous sacrifices, going back generations so that you can have your opportunity. So there's almost an obligation backwards in that way. You should go back to put those old videos back in your mind. Those wonderful family get-togethers, those parties 30, 40 years ago or whatever.
Right.
Why shouldn't that be top of the list versus some disappointment or some tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Who decides what's on the channel? So with that, I forget. I believe it's Carl.
Yeah.
I got lucky. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah. So, no, I think it is important to, to understand, where you're at and what motivates you, a little bit of self-reflection, what drives you, whether that is to be more like someone else or to be a better person of yourself. And you can't get there overnight. There is no switch that you can flip that says, tomorrow I'm going to be everything I want to be, unless you happen to win the lottery, and even that's a challenge. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff in the investment impact world where people are trying to help others. One group, Devin Thorpe with Supercrowd and Impact Cherub, is teaching people to make $100 a month investments in small businesses, like a savings account deposit. And he's the only person I've seen who's approaching crowdfunding from an investment standpoint that makes sense to me. He's not trying to get rich, overnight with a home run on a single investment. Particularly when you're only investing $100, it's kind of hard to get rich on a $100 investment. But by doing it over time, he's actually benefiting the small businesses and the communities in which they're in. He's helping create jobs and all the spillover and positive consequences that come out of that. But he's very methodical. I mean, to get rich, he's like any other savings deposit story that you've been told by a financial advisor. You got to do it a long time in steps to get to where you want to go. And I think that being inspired, it doesn't require that, again, that we can jump the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle or some momentous event. We just be inspired to do one more thing today that we wouldn't have done otherwise. That makes the world a better place, that makes ourselves a better person. And by doing that, we'll build on our experience, we'll build on what we're doing. And in some ways, we will also begin to inspire those in our community, as Jason was talking, and as you mentioned, Don, this is not a Lone Ranger activity. We live in a social environment, and everybody who steps up and does something is motivating everybody else to do the same.
Yeah, and I think success, is self-defining. So once someone achieves success, and especially in the early stages of their activity, is to identify that lowest hanging fruit, right? Because it's a belief that you need to inspire. Once somebody believes, once somebody works with confidence, they have patience, they have time. They'll go back and think about it that night. Okay, what are we going to change tomorrow? And I think satisfaction with yourself is important. When you put your head on the pillow, because no matter who you're with, you come home to yourself every night, right? And you got to justify your day or enjoy it. So what's going to make it satisfying? And too many people put stuff for themselves. The stuff should follow you. It's who are you? Are you being a better person? Could you have done a little bit better? Could you have smiled a little bit more? Could you have greeted somebody for a little bit more time and thought? I mean, so, it's like, you're talking about micro lending, things of that nature. It's micro giving. It's the little things that really don't take anything except maybe a little thought and understanding someone else's situation instead of being preoccupied with your own. You don't care too much about yourself when you dive into something bigger than yourself. When you're busy, you forget to eat, right? When you're happy, you forget to sleep. How many times? Well, I couldn't believe it's 2 a.m. We've been talking for 5 hours, but having a ball. I mean, so those are the experiences. You can't, they say you come into the world with nothing. The worst you can do is break even, right? You can't take it with you, and everything's on loan. Nobody owns anything, So I think if you put it in that perspective, and how much do you need really to fill your needs? And I think that's where minimalism can help so many people. I know Gary Vee, and I'm not a big fan of his style, but who's to say, his whole thing is, if you're starting something and you're working really hard at a business, sell your house, move in with your parents for a year or two, right? Your cash flow needs will go way down, right? Or move into an apartment and not and take that equity and invest it in something. So I think it's really a matter of, why are you doing what you're doing, and do you need to do it for that? When I owned my own businesses, I for years I'd made less than about 12 people there and nobody knew it. There are years I didn't even take a paycheck and nobody knew it. And I had to be the happy, nice guy signing those checks, right? But it was my benefit. It was my challenge, and I accepted that. But if I wouldn't have done that, the business wouldn't have survived, So it's always better, to be in a situation where you don't have to worry for a while. If everything's covered, if everything's taken care of, then you don't really marginalize yourself, because people will say, well, I'm going to trade some time for money, right? Or I need to make money and I'm going to be working with somebody I don't really want to, if given a choice, in an area I'm not really fond of, right? But it's not isolated, because it spills over into what you are passionate about, right? Because when you get done with that person, the next person gets whatever came from that person. So you got to look at things as more integrated. And, how's your family think about you and what you do? There's a communication strategy to that, because how many people would say, well, hell, you've been on LinkedIn for 4 years. How much money you make? And that's a good question for someone who isn't on for 4 years and doesn't see. And maybe they're right. I mean, that's always a good possibility. But I think that's the key. So, Jason, coming back to you, we've got about 6.5 minutes left. So probably would be a good time to share your thoughts of the show, and then we'll turn it over to Carl, and we'll try to be respectful of top hour, because it is a business day. So, Jason, what's your thoughts from the first time you were here to now, and how the show transpired?
I think it's great. This is, I believe, my third time joining. It is my third time joining you. And the first time, you never know what you're getting into. I've done probably 20 podcasts, a couple, probably 2 or 3 other LinkedIn Lives besides your program. And you never know what you're going to get into. You never know kind of where it's at. I mean, you look at the past ones and you do your homework, of course. The one thing I'll say, I've had great experiences. I don't want to put anything about anything else. It's been great. This one is truly community. This one, everyone shows up, and you do see, you see the same people showing up. So it's beautiful that community builds. And each time I'm seeing new faces that you're saying are part of the community. So I'm being exposed to new people. So, everyone's showing up on their own time, which is great, because that speaks to you're doing it every day. Because maybe not everyone can make it at 11 a.m. Eastern on Monday, but Tuesday they're in. and then that allows them to still participate in this wonderful community. So I think it's great. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I think the mindset of a LinkedIn Live is great. We've talked about that for getting out to people and reaching folks and being more transparent and being more open. I think it's really good to let people see who you truly are. That's one thing that I get called on, is that I can come off a little dry sometimes when I'm speaking to instead of speaking with, and I love speaking with. So this is the opportunity. So thank you for that. To wrap up for today's thing, I want to say about inspiration and inspire. There's a saying that says, if you want to have a friend, be a friend. If you want to be loved, be loving. I think the same thing goes for inspiration. If you want to be inspired, be inspiring. And it puts you in that place. It changes you. Maybe you might go, oh, I'm not inspired though, but it puts you in a mindset to allow you to get on that journey yourself and to also give back. So I think that's a wonderful place to be.
That's beautiful. I think you really encapsulated it well. And it's nice to recognize the audience and each other and what we're able to create in an hour, because there is some art to this. There's some entertainment to it. There's some education to it. And that's a lot of baskets along with inspiration and motivation for people to choose a little bit of this. It's like spices, maybe I'll add a little bit to that dish, and maybe I'll do something to that. And it just shows you how you have access and control to things. And, here's the other thing I just thought of when Jason was talking, and that's the beauty of having people on to make you think of things you wouldn't have thought without them.
Right.
Is that how many times can get an hour of 50 people to be with you and hear them, right? And most times, if you do a post, it's like a blink. If you do an audio and a video organically, it's kind of a look. But this is people are actually sitting down, listening, talking, and sharing without any of that. So that's one more premium to having one's own live show, is you can build that audience for yourself, but more importantly for them first, because now you got a sounding board.
Right.
Now you got all these friends that are with you all the time, and it's your obligation to bring more value, to give them more opportunities, to ask more questions. So Carl, your turn.
Yeah, so I think the greatest value of your program, Don, is in the number of participants who are there. That they say if you're trying to judge distance, you need two eyes in order to get two different perspectives. And by having this many people who are participating and engaging in your program, you're getting this huge multitude of perspectives. That means that whatever we're talking about is getting more clear, more crystallized in terms of what we're talking about. And again, as we mentioned before this show, with the chaotic nature of what's going on today and the ability to the difficulty in forecasting the future, having more people share their perspectives and learn and engage with them helps us all in understanding, what maybe our next steps should be, because at least we can understand what this group of people sees. And that gives us a little more comfort, a little more security in the next decision I make the minute we get off the show.
Well, that's terrific. And what it also says is that, at a certain point, we talked about connections and followers. It's all about friendships and relationships. And I've got 37,000 followers or whatever, your connections. And the only ones that matter are the ones right here in the room right now, right? Those are the ones that are with me. Those are the ones that we're working together, And here's one more thing that people fail to fully appreciate or aren't aware of. All these people are influencers. All these people have somewhere between 3 and 40,000 connections, and they post every day and they go to other shows. So if you got 50 times 20,000, okay, you got 1 million reach. And that's what you got to look for, is what's your amplified reach? Where does it begin? Who's there at the beginning, but how far does it go? Right. My 11-year-old grandson watches this show every day without I didn't even know it. He just loves the stories and he just loves the inspiration. And I said to him, Leo, if I was 11 and I was introduced to this at this age, you know where I could have been? You know, I think I was in my 30s before I even understood what personal development was all about. You know, and I think that's the hope for the future. Is it's not kids are spending too much time on tablets, it's what's on the tablets, right? If you had 11-year-olds talking to 11-year-olds in an hour show like this, sharing what their school day is, sharing what their situation is, they'd have a relief valve. They've had a supportive community. How many people can't talk to people, aren't allowed to? And if they do, it's worse than that. So that's what I see. We can soften the market for communication, for expression, for inspiration. And that can grassroots. Everything has to be bottom up from here on. The top is broken. Anyways, without going into a lot of detail, thank you so much, Jason, Carl. Thank you, audience. We're all agents of change, but let's start the change within ourselves, because we're more accepting of trying things before we actually put it out there. But then be the example of that change. You know, no one cares about the tell. They want to see the show. You know, there's too many people, not enough people walking. So anyways, come back tomorrow. Let me see who we have on. Tomorrow is Beverly and Tanya, our sales funnel individual. Wednesday is Elizabeth and William. Thursday is a new person, Lisa Goldenthal, with Kelly and myself. And then Jeffrey Lackey is Friday with Amet and Kumar Ramdell, and it just gets better. So with that, final thank yous to everybody. It's so grateful. I am so grateful to be here every day with you. And we learn and grow so much. And as each one of us grows, the whole group gets better for that growth. So thank you again. See you tomorrow if you can. Love you guys. Take care. Bye for now.